So I have just a little bit of business to take care of and a few announcements to make, and then I'll read us into the chapter. I guess the first thing I should say is Aradia and I have a planned break, so this will be the last episode to come out for probably a month-ish.
It's going to be closer to 3 weeks.
Yeah, closer to 3 weeks, and obviously tangents will come out. So anyway, we're taking a quick break just to have a chance to relax between the books.
Chance to panic behind the scenes.
And also it depends on, we're going to publish all these episodes, and then we're going to have to rebuild our buffer on the next book, starting with SpoilerCon. So our first episode will be recorded at SpoilerCon. So no live recordings for the next, until October 1st. And if you're listening to this not live, there will be just a short break, probably a couple-week break in episodes coming out, so that we can plan for SpoilerCon and regroup a little bit before the next book, because there's a lot that's going on between then and now. Also, the show's coming out, if you weren't aware, so we kind of want to get ready for that, too. So there's just we'll still be doing a lot of work in the background, but it'll be nice to actually take a small break from the grind of producing episodes to a week, as we have now been doing that for 386 times.
Seth, what can you tell me about SpoilerCon? Is it too late for me to sign up and go?
No, it is not. You can absolutely sign up. It will be on October 1st and 2nd here in Portland, Oregon.
And online.
And online, if you want to join. You can absolutely listen online. We have a great lineup of guests. The guests are going to be joining us via Zoom, but they will be live. So we have Daniel Green, Matt Hatch from the Dusty Wheel, and Michael Kramer and Kate Redding have all filled slots for us. There was so many more people we could have brought in, but honestly, we're not a multi-track con.
It's a 2-day event.
It's a 2-day event, and we only have one conference room. So, people got to eat, people got to sleep, people got to party. So, yeah, it's just going to be a blast, and I cannot wait. We're putting all the final details into place, because there's always last-minute details on things like this. But it is, basically nailed in, solid, and going to be a great time.
Yeah, registration is open through the end of this month for the in-person con, and you can get online tickets all the way up until the con starts, because it doesn't take nearly as much effort to supply people with stuff online. But if you can't make it physically, you can totally make it online, and that should still be really fun.
And the caterers won't let us extend the deadline any further. So get your tickets.
Get your tickets. Get them now. But check out spoilercon.org for all that information, or at SpoilerCon on all the social media.
And then I have about 20 names to read as for patrons. Sorry, Jason, to make you sit through all this, but it's our last episode, and I realized I needed to get this all done before we go on break.
No, do it. Name those patrons, those awesome, wonderful people.
People give us money for yelling into the void.
I know,
it's
just wonderful.
And wonderful.
Yeah, the patrons are really the reason that we have 386 episodes of this podcast. Without you guys, there is no way this would have kept going. There's really, I'm looking at two groups of people: Jason, who got us started, and the patrons who keep us going. That's really, so thank you to everybody out there who continues to give. We always read out the names of new patrons, but, as always, a huge shout out to those of you who have started. Some of you have been giving for nearly 4 years now, which is just amazing. So thank you so much to everybody who continues to give as well. Let's see. Again, it's been about 3 months since we thanked people. So we have, starting about 3 months ago, Weanne Beaton, then Spencer McLean, Cat the Coonhound, Spiral in Your Eyes, Catherine K., Kelly Stevens, Michael Vargas, Nicholas, who's probably here live.
I would suspect so.
Hey, thank you, Nicholas. Leanne Bales, Eason, DC Turner, Carolyn Reiser, Simon McKay, Callum Evans, and Knuckles Mustache.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
We really appreciate it.
Especially the ones who happen to be here live when we read your names.
That's always really cool.
Special kind of amazing.
I'm like, that's why you gave. You wanted to yell at us in real time. Excellent. Oh, and Hellcat's here as well. Cat the Coonhound. Wonderful. Hi.
Welcome to the recording, to the madness, to how the sausage gets made. I don't know. It's a mess, but we appreciate you all very, very much, whether you've given a little bit or a lot bit for a long time or a short time. If you've gone away and come back, if you just listen to our stuff and give us stats, you're all wonderful.
And guess what I mailed yesterday?
You mailed out
I mailed out all the merch. So that is coming to everybody. You should be getting stickers and letters in your mail within the next, however long postage takes to get to you from Portland.
Days to months,
because there's that Australia contingent.
Yeah, that was why Seth came down to visit me, so we could sign letters together and stuff envelopes. There's stickers with the new art. Some of you may be getting 2 stickers because there was a slight mix-up on the order of operations as we were going around the kitchen table packing things. So some of you are getting 2 stickers because we figured it was better to double up than to accidentally send out stickerless letters. Because, yeah, mass producing hundreds of letters and stickers and envelopes was, it wasn't impossible, but we definitely messed up a few orders of operations.
But lots of help, lots of fun. We got to hang out, listen to Wheel of Time, and
yeah, it was hilarious. We started listening to book 10 because that's where you are, and then Never came in, and she was like, "Wait, you can't spoil that." So we had to like jump back to book 2. But it's Wheel of Time. It's time is a puddle.
Right,
It's all good.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And I think we've all heard it so many times that going back and forth doesn't really matter. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, put on Wheel of Time. Like where? Pick a point. I'll listen to it. I swear to God.
Exactly.
Yeah, don't tempt me. I'll start from there. And
We should play one of those games sometime where it's how long does it take you to guess accurately what book it is? It's like, name that song, name that tune. It's like, name that
game idea. I'm writing that down.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
You got to invite me for the first session of that. So
I would be so bad at that. I am so bad at knowing which events happen in which books. Like I know their relative order, but where the book divisions are. So I would suck at that game. Sounds like fun.
it depends. I think I could probably I certainly could do like the easy ones and the surface level ones, but the deep dives would be a lot of fun to get into and figure that out.
Yeah, I like the idea of just doing a contest like we did Jeopardy with Randland TV Pod, something like that, except like you play a song. And that's great. That's a great idea. And
that's a really good
and it's
idea.
like whoever can get the closest chapter, right? Like name the book and the chapter, like chapter
and verse.
Chapter and verse, yeah. Bonus points if you can name the chapter title, not just the chapter number.
Right. Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, I would suck at that so bad.
Oh man, I would be actually pretty good at that, I think. Especially after doing the podcast, because every chapter is a different episode. So that's really helpful.
It would be different, the ones we've podcasted versus the ones we haven't podcasted yet.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
We are on today, chapter 41, A Crown of Swords. And our symbol is the snake in the wheel.
Because it's the ultimate chapter of the book.
Yes, the pattern is making things happen. So, Jason, you said you wanted to go into some detail about
I think this is the only chapter in the series that shares its title with the title of the book. It's the only book title that appears as a chapter. Eye of the World is not the name of a chapter anywhere. The only one that I kind of got tripped up on was there's actually a chapter called The Dragon Reborn, but I don't think there is.
I thought there was.
And all the others. Maybe,
how about In Winter's Heart?
Even Winter's Heart. I don't think that can be for all the people who are listening live. They can be the researchers here. You can be our brownage for the day here for the hour. But yeah, I think this is the only book title to appear as a chapter in the series.
I think you're right. Just off the top of my head, that sounds right.
Or at least in the book it's in, certainly.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it also feels to me like there's not very many books that end without an epilogue. I think there might be more than one that ends without an epilogue, but this is rare in the sense that there isn't an epilogue.
That's true. Although there's kind of there's a cheat epilogue. There's 3 paragraphs at the end of the chapter that have that epilogue feel.
Yeah.
That you're right. They are not a epilogue in the way that they were later used throughout the series, to give other point of view.
In the same way that, what was it, Fires of Heaven didn't have a prologue, but the first chapter was essentially the prologue, just labeled chapter 1. And if you go back and look at it, it's much longer. It's all non-main characters. It has all the hallmarks of being a prologue.
Yeah.
It's just they decided we're not doing a prologue this one because it's too long or something. But they gave in and decided to give him his prologues.
Yeah, we should write a strongly worded letter to the Jordan estate and demand that they change that, to be consistent throughout.
That seems reasonable.
They'll listen to us.
Tossing, Rand dreamed. Wild dreams where he argued with Perrin and begged Matt to find Elaine. where colors flashed just beyond sight, and Padden Fane leapt at him with a flashing blade. And sometimes he thought he heard a voice moaning for a dead woman in the heart of a fog. Dreams where he tried to explain himself to Elaine, to Avienda, to Min, to all three at once, and even Min looked at him with scorn. Not to be disturbed, Codswain's voice. Part of his dreams? The voice frightened him. In his dream, he shouted for Lewis Theron, and the sound echoed through a thick mist where shapes moved and people and horses died screaming. A fog where Codswain followed him implacably while he ran, panting. Alana tried to soothe him, but she was afraid of Codswain too. He could feel her fear as strongly as his own. His head hurt, and his side. The old scar was fire. He felt Sidene. Someone held Sidene. Was it him? He did not know. He struggled awake. You'll kill him, Min shouted. I won't let you kill him.
Fever dreams.
Yeah. Although there is a bit of, like, the colors are swirling, and I have to wonder if that doesn't evolve into him seeing Matt and Perrin. That's part of that whole Matt Perrin swirl thing.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be. What I like about this from a writing perspective too is that this chapter's, I mean, all the books are full of them, but there's a couple Jordan isms even in that little bit that you read. It's like even while he's having a fever dream, he's stressing about what Elaine and Min, and he's confused about all these three women, these problems,
Totally.
these women problems that he's got. He's concerned about his feelings, but also what it is. I mean, even though at this point, he has pretty firmly, declared love for all three of them, but still he's sorting through these feelings on Elaine, Min, and Avienda.
Well, he hasn't figured out how to love all three of them at the same time. He still feels like he
Right.
has to choose. Yeah. And by being with Min, he's betraying Avienda and Elaine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like, too, how it's like half of it's fever dream and half of it's him kind of being conscious while getting carried out of the fog. Like, part of it is a dream, but it's not a dream. It's him fading in and out of consciousness while getting carried out of the fog. And then part of it is just completely allegorical fever dream madness, and it's just all wound together, and it's very, very Jordan-esque. He likes his confusing dream sequences that are not fully dreams.
So he wakes up to a room full of people.
Drama.
And they really are. You got one side, you've got the wise ones and Bera and Karuna, who are basically those who are sworn to him. You got Codswain's group at the foot of the bed, or on the opposite side of the bed. And then at the foot of the bed, you've got the Ashaman. Mm-hmm. Including Deshiva. Yes. AKA Osingar.
Yeah, it's always interesting to read that from. I love going back and reading Deshiva as knowing who he was and what, and everything. And that was one that on my first read through that I was surprised. I didn't see that one coming. And most people don't, and it's a little bit out of left field, but it's all good.
And one of the things I'd say is, like, I really noticed how often Jordan says, and then there's Deshiva, who does something completely different than the rest of the Ashaman. And he just says that over and over and over again. It
was always clear that Deshiva was different from the others, and he's baiting us with the fact that you think Deshiva is the furthest along with his madness, because he mumbles to himself. He's, jumping at shadows, and he's, surprised when people talk to him. I mean, he seems to be the furthest down the road. And you see it in this chapter here. What also is of note is he's the one who is most excited for Rand to kill Sammael.
Yeah.
And he's, I forget exactly what he says or how we can check it, but he's basically like, you're going to kill Sammael today, right? Right. And you can almost tell that he's hopeful for this. And he's the one who clearly knows that there's more than just the benefit to Rand if Sammael goes down.
What do you think his orders are being there?
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot for that. I forget it's been a while since I recall what Deshiva's orders were, but yeah, I can't recall what the orders were.
I'm not sure it's ever entirely clear. I think it's more of a guess based on his actions,
Yeah, I think that, I think at this point, I think we can fairly safely say that we know that Osingar / Agnor is probably in the Age of Legends, is probably terrified of Sammael, and, or at least, if not outwardly, probably internally, like think about those characters and
Nerd versus jock, right?
Yeah.
right, yeah. Do you really think Sammael was afraid of Agenor?
No.
You think Agenor was shaking in his boots anytime that Sammael, this scarred face, walks in like a badass?
Yeah.
Probably there's something,
Maybe that's the reason he created the golem.
right?
Just to get a Sammael.
Or any of the Shadow Spawn, just to feel protected and powerful. Although he could, I think in this chapter does lay it out that it does say that, that he channels, almost as powerfully as Rand. That you guys probably have the glossary hand or whatever, but I'd be curious, like, where does he rank in terms of strength compared to Sammael?
Oh, he's one of the most powerful. I think he's quite a bit more. He's actually quite a bit more powerful than Sammael. So he's
really?
actually in raw power, which is so funny that he's like this terrible fighter, but in raw power, he's actually nearly, like it says in this chapter, nearly as powerful as Rand. He's one of the few Forsaken who can actually, I think in the ranking is correct, he might be like behind a Sammael and maybe like Ravine. Demandred, yeah.
So he's a top 4 or 5
exactly.
guy probably.
Yeah, so which is funny, he just doesn't, and it shows you the difference between raw power and skill.
Yes.
Is that just because you can channel a lot of the one power, if you're no good at it, like if all your exploits are on, some sort of genetic scale, what if his skills are like at incredibly good manipulation of DNA, right? Like how does that apply on a day-to-day battlefield? It doesn't, right? Like it doesn't mean he's not skilled, and it doesn't require a lot of power and a lot of fine control. It's just
it's like, I am really, really, really darn good with computers. Can I hack into something? Probably not, but I can Photoshop, or whatever, right?
Well, and I always imagine this is the equivalent of like, you're really, really good with computers, and if you were teleported into a future where computers didn't work anymore, all those skills would be completely worthless, and you'd be like, well, I'm really from an advanced civilization. I can do all sorts of things with computers, and they're like, what are those? And you're like, well, it's lightning.
I'm really good with computers, but don't give me one of those IBMs from the 1960s or whatever. Punch cards. I have no idea what the punch card.
So what's happening here is that the two groups of channeling women are not super pleased with each other, except in the fact that they have allies to be mad at the men with. It's like the existential threat of like, okay, well, we're not allies except with these guys. With those guys, we are now allies because those guys are scary. And it's a lot of, they've been bickering around Rand's bed for 2 days because Rand's been in a medical coma, basically.
So I think they've mostly been leaving him alone. I think what happened is Adley came back with news about the battlefront, and that brought everybody into the room. He went into the room, and everyone was like, "Yo, don't go in there without us." Basically, we have a say, and that's where. And Adley's like, "We have to wake him up now, in order for him to deal with this battle." And Min's saying, "No, you'll kill him if you try and wake him up." Right. And so I think and then that commotion actually does wake him up.
Oh, I didn't even pick up that that they woke him up. I thought, I see it. Yeah, I missed that. That's a good catch.
Like Cotswain's trying to keep them out. She's like, he's not to be disturbed. Everybody stay out. And Adley's barging in, being like, no, there's a battle going on. We need him on the battlefront because Wiramon's a fucking moron, aka Dark Friend.
Dark Friend.
And so that commotion then caused him to finally wake up after the rest and the healing. It took me a little while to put that together. There's a line here where it says Deshiva didn't know why Adley was there, and I looked it up, and I was able to unwind that whole plot and figure out like, why is he there?
Yeah, I was noticing Adley kept getting mentioned, and he's all like subtly important, and I'm just like, what is why? Mm-hmm. I don't know. But yeah, no, you're totally right. That makes sense.
Adley has brought news that the battle has begun, and the battle beginning is what forces Rand to take action against Sammael at this moment.
Right, because he had all these plans set up, and there's a line later where he's like, all this elaborate stuff to convince Sammael that I'm not going to be here, blah, blah, blah. And then I get laid up with a stupid, evil knife wound, and it just ruins all my strategy. Doesn't matter. I'll kill him anyway.
Ruins all my stuff.
Yeah. And it wouldn't have ruined his strategy if Wiramon hadn't charged ahead.
Because Wiramon is an agent of chaos.
Yep. So it's a fun little plot to put that all together because it's not laid out explicitly in this chapter.
Yeah, it's very windy. But yeah, Rand is just waffling between what's going on? How am I not dead? Mm-hmm. What? How long have I been asleep?
Yeah.
Why am I waking up at all? I don't get it.
Because he's like, I got cut with Fane's dagger. I should be dead. I've never seen that. I've never seen anyone survive more than a few seconds with that.
Yeah, fully expected to be dead, not juggling warping battle strategies right out of bed. Not having my boots on yet. We'd have to like plan the war again. But yeah, he kind of gets the little rundown about how it was a team effort between men and women to keep him alive.
Zool makes a good point that the channeling was most likely Dom or Flynn trying. Well, Flynn already healed him, right?
That was 2 days ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So
he's been sleeping it off
yeah.
for 2 days.
But Cat Twin does point out, and she says that, you would only be alive because of these three
Right.
people working. I don't know if she says working together, but she said that each one of them contributed to him being alive. And there is a line in there, I forget exactly what it is, but that she hints at that, what Dammer Flynn, no, I think, never mind. She says all three. She says that, things happened here that I don't think may probably haven't have happened since the Age of Legends, or at least since the breaking.
She
anyway.
says without all three, you would be dead by now. And before that, it's each has done a part, including some things I think have not been done since the breaking.
There you go. Yes, that's great. Now, it doesn't say that they work together.
Yeah, that's what I have to wonder is that the first male-female circles? Is that what she's saying? Because that would be something that hasn't happened since the breaking.
I don't think so.
I don't think so, but I think that I think Jordan is zeroing in on that. It's they're independently doing their own thing. They're working these little silos on Rand or whatever. Maybe one person is able to do something, but they aren't yet linked up.
It's like the dome in Dumai's Wells, where they're working together to create the dome, but they're not linked. They're all just creating their little portion of it. So they're working together. They're not working together.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the fact that they're even trying puts them into that not since the Age of Legends kind of territory. Yeah. And Cadsuane's just guessing. She's not even trying to project Aes Sedai mastery of stuff. She's just like, seems to me like that was some pretty inventive shit. You just went through experimental surgery, patient zero. Congratulations on waking up.
Right, exactly. And I wouldn't be surprised, clearly, if there was some Tavaranness going away. I mean, going on here. I mean,
oh, of course. That's why all those people were there at that time. No other way, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and if you really want to go, really, Taviran made him get the wound so that he would, and then get healed from it so that he would be able to cleanse the power, which had to happen before the turning of the wheel, right? Because he needs the wound to get the clue to how to cleanse the one power. So really,
he couldn't die.
So he couldn't die. This is just the pattern being like, here's a clue. Little nick for you, little alternating beats of pain, just to help you understand that the two powers oppose each other.
Yeah.
We get a mention of Corell here. She sort of more of an introduction, really. She's one of Codswain's Aes Sedai, who was at Lady Ireland's palace, but this is really the first time she's introduced. Pretty minor, like background in a lot of places, but she ends up bonding Dom or Flynn as her warder.
Yeah, because he heals Rand, and she's like, I will literally have your children if you tell me what you did.
Yeah, that's right.
And she does, basically.
Yeah, that's the beginning of their relationship. She's like, yes, you're old and wizened and also brilliant.
Mm-hmm. And she survives the last battle in Mayan as a healer.
That makes sense. Her and Dahmer would have been at Mayan.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Does she have his child?
I don't think we know yet, but I assume
I'm gonna headcanon that she does.
Yeah, I definitely headcanon that she does.
Because he's a channeler now. He can totally live long enough to be a father. He's not gonna die in the kids first. Oh, chat is correcting us. It was Simitsu that said she would have his children. Details.
Okay, all right, never mind.
Yeah, that was a different Aes Sedai.
But we remember that someone offered to have his child.
But still, healers bonding in a difficult healing situation and ultimately bonding with the capital B.
And one of those offers was facetious. The other one, he took her up on it, I guess,
Yeah.
See, I'm more and more convinced they bonded to heal him, but that's a whole without all three, right?
Because they each take turns at it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the idea that it was a circle, but there's just no textual evidence. Circles get given so much emphasis that there's no way that the first one happened with no mention. I guess it could be. Jordan does whatever he wants, but...
Then we get some fan service for the Yosha fans out there, which is Rand trying to get out of bed and his bottom being exposed to everyone.
I've already seen more of your hairless bottom cheeks than I wish to.
Yeah, that was a great line.
Which leads to a great trivia question of, does Rand have hair on his butt? And that's, we know that for a fact. The answer is no.
And then there's the other line like, oh, but it's such a pretty bottom, isn't it? The whole him getting out of bed and them just like, how can we shame him back into bed by talking smack about his butt? It's just, it's fun.
It's fun.
Yeah, that is quintessential Robert Jordan stuff
Yeah.
right there, you know.
Yeah. Let's shame you for being naked. Yay.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed in this section is that, so all the women are like, do not get out of bed, you stupid child. And Rand gets out of bed anyway. And Bera, who is an Aes Sedai, looks to Amis for guidance on what to do when Rand gets out of bed. She doesn't look to Cadswain. She doesn't take her own action. She looks to Amis because she is, against her better judgment, she is internalizing being an apprentice to the Wise Ones.
Well, they swore to Rand, and he put the Amis in charge. So when Rand's not around, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point that you make there, that regardless of the oath that she's taken, it's the fact that her instinct is to look to Amis.
Yeah.
That says something right there. You know, and we people, you know, naturally, like, you know, we're gonna, in those kind of situations, you're gonna turn to the person that you look to for advice. You're gonna look to the natural, who you consider to kind of be the natural leader in that scenario.
Yeah, I think if she was only going by her oaths, she would look to Cadswain and then remember to look at Amis. But she's actually taking on her student role, and so she looks to Amis first. And I like that, because Amis deserves respect.
Do you think the lack of modesty Rand picks up is an advantage here?
I don't think he has a lack of modesty. I think he's been desensitized to being embarrassed a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
It's not a lack of modesty.
I took it as more of, this is a manifestation of Rand's supreme stubbornness. And he has a mission. That mission is to kill Sammael, and to hell with the pain that he's feeling, to hell with the embarrassing looks. And he's like, you know, he's like so many other things, like we were talking about earlier, this is, albeit a very small one in the grand scheme of things, but this is just another blow that he's willing to take in order to see his duty done.
And one of the things I love one of the things that Jordan does a lot, I'm not sure I love it, is that he often puts his heroes, or at least Rand at least, in severe physical pain and disadvantage before the biggest fights, right? He did it in Ruidian, right? He made Rand really fucking hungover with all the Usquai that the Maidens took with him. They got him no sleep. He was dehydrated and sunburned, you know, and like there he was fighting Asmodean, yeah. And that was a hell of a fight.
Yeah. And of course, do might wells.
Yeah.
You know, all the beatings. Yeah, you're right. He frequently,
he likes to beat his characters up before the big
he
fight.
frequently is, you know, and I think a lot of that too is that, you know, because Rand gets to a point where Rand is OP.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so you gotta, it's more, I don't know, my writer brain goes there,
Yeah.
you know, where it goes like, you know, of course you're gonna beat him up. You want him at a disadvantage. You want, you know, and so in this one, he has got, you know, just start tacking on. You know, he's got his side wound. He's got the new slash on top of the side wound. He's dehydrated, and, you know, Cadswain makes a comment that they were only able to get a little bit of broth down his throat over 2 days. So he hasn't eaten
Right.
2 days, and he gets up without eating.
Yeah, he does this whole fight on an empty stomach. What?
Right?
He's also exhausted from healing effects.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, he's got that. And then later in the chapter, he hurts his foot, and he ends up limping for most of the chapter. And it's not just the cat, like, you know, it's like, you know, this flaming red bar goes flying through, or he steps on it or something like that. But it pierces his foot. And so he's limping. And if you think about it, you know, he's limping as he's limping around Shadar Logoth, as, you know, Sammael is bringing down God knows what on him. And that's part of that foot injury that caused him to, you know, fall in the pit and meet the Wanderer.
Yeah, the blind pain and everything like that, yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, he's like he's doing sword forms with a wounded foot, like fighting off multiple Trollocs at once. But yeah, he's got a rusty nail in his foot. It's fine.
Yeah.
When you're hurt, though, adrenaline's an amazing thing. It can let you ignore pain in ways that you wouldn't expect. I had, for example, swim meet. I had a teammate who his foot got caught in the blocks in the beginning of the event, and he just broke 3 of his toes. You know, swam the whole event, didn't realize, it's like, I thought I hurt, but you don't even realize you've got broken bones when you have that kind of adrenaline rushing through you.
He's in the void
Yep.
too.
Yeah.
Here, I'll do a little read, just a small paragraph. He could ignore them in the void. He moved, forcing another man's muscles to work, pushed himself up and scrambled away in a lurching run toward the dais, just as hundreds of red filaments burned down through the ceiling, burned through the statue marble floor in a wide circle all around where the residue of his gateway was still fading. One stabbed through the heel of his boots, through his heel, and he heard himself cry out as he fell, not his pain, inside or foot, not his. So Jordan does that throughout the chapter where he's talking, he distances, Rand distances his consciousness, so to speak, from the physical pain. He talks a lot in this chapter about how, another man, is feeling the pain. I think in other chapters and other parts in the series, he talks about, it's another man killing, it's another man going through this. And I mean, that we're talking, that's quintessential Robert Jordan. And I mean, you've known, and probably a lot of the readers know, or maybe not know, that, one of the big things that inspired Robert Jordan to write this series was, coming out of Vietnam, and his experience in Vietnam was very much like that. Hey, have you guys heard that? Have you heard the Iceman story?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Many times. Yeah.
And so that's, the Iceman, his nickname.
We actually, in episode 100, we have Robert Jordan's brother telling us that story.
Oh really?
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wilson.
Yeah.
Which fantastic.
I missed the hell out of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing with the whole like other man's pain thing is like, maybe I've just never been through a bad enough situation, but like I've tried, it doesn't work. It from hangnails to tattoos, it doesn't work.
But you can't embrace the void. See, that's the thing. You need some training in the void.
I will say that there are meditative techniques that do make tattooing an easier space to be in, but dissociating from the pain is a totally useless avenue for me. Maybe it's just because I've never been through war.
Or maybe it's because, you are presenting as a woman and therefore you channel Saidar rather than Saidin. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, because it's true. None of the Saidar channelers ever do that. But yeah, I got it for a while. I was like, yeah, it's somebody else's arm being stabbed a million times. No, it's not. It's definitely my arm.
I stub my toe and I'm like, it's another man's fucking pain.
Or maybe it's just because I don't have, a mad voice of my past self constructed in my head to project all that onto.
Yeah. And actually, that's one of the things I found fascinating about this chapter too, is jumping ahead just a little bit, but this is kind of the beginning of, or is it a continuation? You guys will tell me, is it a continuation of, or the beginning of him almost missing Luz Theron? He's looking for Luz Theron. It's a continuation of it? Okay, yeah.
Because basically, Codswain confronted him and said, "You have a voice in your head," and he freaked out and stopped hearing the voice in his head, and now he's like, "I don't know what's going on."
Yeah,
because it's just a voice in your head and you're freaking out. And that means also that he doesn't have an outlet for some of his more toxic emotions during this chapter, because LTT is that outlet for him in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
So he uses some of his, I don't know. I think he gets a little more crazy when he doesn't have LTT in his head, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
A little more reckless, a little, and that we've been talking about how he went through this sort of depressive and then manic phase. And I think some of that might be the fact that like he doesn't have an outlet for the crazy, which is the LTT voice in his head. And so this manic, I'm going to do everything all at once, is happening because of the lack of LTT.
Yeah.
If we speak in the manic portion of it, there is a little bit of a sense I'm going to get meta with the book again. I noticed this as a reader, but I have thought about it more consciously as I have done my own writing, is that this, I don't want to sound critical of it, but the ending feels rushed. You know what I mean? Like we've got all these things going on, and then all of a sudden it's like, I remember as a reader wondering to myself, I wonder if Robert Jordan got to the end of the book, we're like, crap, I need an ending. I need to tie it off here before I keep going. And so I'm going to, I'm going to wake up and roll out of bed and go kill another Forsaken.
Yeah.
Now having read this again fresh recently and playing off of your point earlier that he has been planning this, it is a bit reactive to the fact that, there's a battle going on and he needs to get things going in a certain sequence of events. So he kind of, it's almost like he is not hungover and roll out and has to get to work the next morning, but it's a little bit like that. He's woken up, he's starved. He probably would love nothing more to sleep and to eat some more or whatever, but he's got to get to work. But still, like from a writing point of view, it feels like, okay, we've hit the 300,000 word mark in this book. We need to have the big ending. We need to bring up, who's the next Forsaken on the list. We got to go take them out. And again, I say, I love Rope Jordan. I love these books. Clearly, we're here, and so I say this with a critical and yet, with plenty of fondness and all here. But this ending, this chapter, which is so amazing because it's got so much of what we love about the Wheel of Time all encapsulated. There's so much here. There's so much, other than maybe a really strong presence of, women in this chapter. But other than that, there is so much about what makes the Wheel of Time amazing just in this one chapter. And there's so much, there's mystery, there's new, there's a prophecy, for men, there's war, there's battle, there's the politics, there's, Rand's struggle through it, there's chases and fights and Trollocs and Aiel battles and everything. It's great. There's so much of what we love about the series, all condensed into one chapter. But that one chapter does feel like that, for most of the book, they'd been going 65 and then 65 miles an hour. And then he just slams on the gas in the last chapter, which is fine. It's great.
This comes back to a point that I don't think I really thought about when I first started the podcast, but I sort of, when we did the chapter of Matt and Rand on the road, it's of this very confusing sequence of like, you're very confused, they're very confused. And what I've realized is a lot of times Jordan will write his scenes in the mindset of his main character. And this comes back to, I've heard Harriet say, oh, she could tell when he was writing Fane because he had like a sneering slouch to him and she could just tell that he'd been writing that character. And I think that in a lot of ways, his writing style often reflects the mood of the character that he's writing about. And here, this is a very frantic, very rushed, very everything going on at once chapter, but that's what Rand is feeling.
That's what he saw, exactly. But there are these fantastic moments in this chapter where Rand has to catch his breath. My favorite, every time I read, like so many others, every time when I read these books, every time I read these chapters, I find something new that becomes my new favorite. And the first time you read it, I wanted all the answers, like, who is that wanderer? And clearly is a Forsaken, but no, wait, and all these things.
My cliche is when I say my new favorite thing is, and like people just joke, like you say that about everything in these books. I'm like, well, that's because I'm reading it now.
Yeah. And every time I go back, and so my new favorite thing, I love the quiet moments in the chaos in this series. Jordan is so amazing with this quiet moments with an epic backdrop. And the quiet moment that I love here, someone out there make some fan art and send it to me or something. I don't know what it is, where Rand is channeled to the highest tower in Illian. And he has he's channeled all the weaves out there, just kind of blasting he's setting off every alarm and trap that Sammael has set for him. And then he stops channeling and all the other Ashaman stop because he had told them, anyone who channels after I stop, I'm killing, so stop. I don't want to find out later that it was you. And so everyone stops and there's this moment of quiet and he leans against the wall and he's just exhausted. Infamous, tattered red coat. He's in his iconic Rand costume, the red and gold, thing that he likes to wear at the end of the books. And he's there, he's exhausted.
His Forsaken killing coat.
Yeah, he's not holding Sidene at the moment. And so he's feeling the full physical weight of his burdens and his wounds. And he's just leaning against the wall like, oh my God, I didn't even catch breath. There's no one around to see him. So he unwinds a little bit. There's no one there. He doesn't have to be strong. He can just catch his dang breath. And that for me, like that little moment, that's the stuff that I love, in this chapter. That's my new favorite moment here. And then a minute later, it's like, oh, okay. And, someone's channeling and then off he goes,
To me, that is the mark of someone who has been to war, who finds the quiet moments in the chaos, who knows that there's always, you catch your rest whenever you can, you're burdened when you can. Like, to me, that pacing is something that feels very realistic to me of, okay, you rush, you do this very dangerous thing, and then you sit and wait for your opponent to respond, and you take that
Hurry
moment,
up and wait.
and and then you take that moment to catch your breath and reflect and just be like, holy shit, that just happened. Okay, pulling myself back together again.
Yeah. And in this scene, it's a while. It's not just a moment. It's like the stars start to come out. It's like a while.
yeah.
And he's sitting there being like, did I make it all up? Was all my strategy from LTT based on insanity? Like, I don't know. I've been waiting for a while. And you have no sense of how long it is. Is it 20 minutes? Is it 2 hours? Like, it's a while. It's long enough to have doubt, but it's also very timeless.
Yeah, but time passage is super important in this chapter because the sun setting is such a marker for Mashtar.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
It's not that long because the sun is on the horizon when he gets to the tower. It's not like hours, in my opinion. It's minutes.
It's long enough for him to have a lot of doubt.
Yeah.
But
But-
he's frantic and moving around fast. That could be 30 seconds with him.
Yeah.
I think I got the because it did mention that a few stars come out, and so that takes longer than minutes. I guess I could happen in minutes, but I got the impression it was longer than minutes, shorter than hours.
Because he was there right at twilight, right? He was like
Yes.
the sun was maybe just above the horizon, and then it was hitting the horizon, and it's not below the horizon.
Yeah.
Even though stars are out, the stars are only out on that thing where you look at one side and it's night, and you look at the other side and it's still the sun's still setting.
Yeah. Well, and then when he jumps
Yeah.
to Shadar Logoth, he's moving far enough laterally across the surface of the earth that the time of day changes by like 20,
Different time
40
zone.
minutes.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But it's what you're saying about how it's like he has this moment to breathe, and it's this very soldierly, like, I have a moment to breathe, and like you don't even get a sense of how long it is. Like it's such an altered state, the place that he's in.
Yeah, I feel like the other place I've seen that done really well is Saving Private Ryan, the beach scene. There's a couple of scenes where you're in the middle of all this action and Tom Hanks just takes a moment and you're like, oh, okay. And then he goes right back into the action and stuff like that. So that's such a chaotic movie that those moments of rest are really stick out. So back to this thing, back to the actual chapter and where we are.
Min having a viewing, or
I did want to say they're asking to throw them out, and I did want to point out that Narishma comes up, or Dashiva. See, now you're doing it to me already. Yeah. Dashiva comes up with a complex weave of spirit and fire that's basically torture. That's clearly a Forsaken torture weave.
oh yeah,
Again, more Dashiva is Forsaken. He just happens to have this complex weave that causes pain. From where? How?
and is more than willing to use it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dark friend alert. Dark friend alert. Like that should really be going off.
Yeah,
So yeah, all the women leave. Once he gets dressed, he proves that he can go, and so he's like, "Go wait for me outside."
He checks out Min's butt at that point as she leaves and walks away.
yeah. But yeah, first Min tells him the thing about Cadswain, thorn in the foot thing about Cadswain.
Yeah.
She's going to teach you in the Ashaman something, and I don't know what it is, and neither will the entire audience ever.
So are we? Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
So
I would love to
first
talk
of all,
about that.
we can talk about what it actually is. Yeah. So the first thought I remember when reading is that she was going to teach him how to deal with the madness. Then the prevailing theory throughout the community, I'm talking like the early 2000s, was that she was going to teach them how to deal with the madness, and she was going to teach Rand how to love again or something like that. Was kind of what eventually became.
Yeah.
Remind what was it that she actually taught them in the end? Do we ever get a definitive answer for that?
As far as I'm aware,
Fuck if I know.
it's up for debate. There's no
Yeah.
canon now. Laughter and tears, right? That she,
Yeah.
If I had to say there was a canonical answer, she introduced Rand to his father, reunited them.
That's right. She reunited them.
them. That led to Veins of Gold, which led him sending the note to the Ashaman saying, you are not weapons, you are men. Right? So if there is a lesson that she taught them, all of them, it is that they are not weapons, they are men.
Yeah.
I don't like that answer.
Me either. I get it logically, but I don't feel it's
It feels very
satisfying.
indirect. Yeah.
So let me meta this a little bit too. So it's been a lot of years.
And that could, and you could roll laughter and tears into that. She taught them laughter and tears because that's part of what it means to be a man, that you have emotions and you're a person and you're not just a weapon.
I am, I'll say 90%, 95% confident that this was one of those instances of this is a thing that we lost when we lost Jim, when we lost Robert Jordan. This wasn't in the notes. And Brandon came up with an answer. He probably sounds like he probably kept it intentionally vague, and or maybe it was it was laughter and tears by way of veins of gold, like you were describing, and those were all Brandon things. So I think that whatever Robert Jordan was thinking of back in 1995 when he was typing out that scene and first typed out that vision, that specific idea that he had, I don't think it ever manifested in the exact way that he had intended. Like I don't think it was in the notes. I think that Brandon and Team Jordan collectively, whatever they came up with was they had the same information that we all had to work from in terms of, these are the theories. This is probably what it was. It was probably this. And, Brandon took his best stab at it to address it. And there's a lot of those things, like the colors that Min saw around Sheriam, and her prophecy that gets fulfilled. That was one. I know a lot of the fate of a lot of the Forsakens was another that, there just weren't any notes on it. It just wasn't there.
And I'm willing to bet that those are stuff that Jordan hadn't really necessarily even thought about. He's like, I'll get there when I get there, or he had an idea, or we lost it. You're right. It was lost in time, and that sucks. One day I would really love for Sanderson to come out and say, these are wholly my words, these are wholly his words, this is a mix. Because there are so many things where I'm like, I don't know if that was lost like you're talking about, or if that was just a choice Jordan made. There are things like that are, as a reader, I can't make those judgments because I don't have that information.
Yeah, I don't think this is gospel, but I think, knowing what I know and what I've learned over the years, I think it is safe to say that in almost every case, if you're asking yourself, is this Jordan or is this Sanderson? The answer is Sanderson. And there just wasn't as much. Brandon has been very forthcoming about the things that were Jim's, and certainly, some of the big things were, arcing stuff. We know a lot of a lot of the Matt stuff in the Tower of Genji, a lot of the certain specific scenes in the prologues of each of the 3 books were written by Jim or dictated and then later transcribed. The ending, the ending of the epilogue of the series,
which you can just tell. It feels like Eye of the World all over again. It's just
and even then it's it was dictated. It was Robert Jordan dictating to someone and describing, as I would describe to you, in more common prose. It wasn't like he didn't sit there and speak in prose, although Robert Jordan did. Said, I'm a California kid, right? And Robert Jordan had a way of speaking like he wrote. And that ending, he would say things like, and so Cadsuan is there on the hill, and Olivia, has a horse, and Rand gets there and the pipe, and better than that, but it's more or less like that. And then Brandon had to take what was essentially probably about 250 words and a single page in a paperback size, and extrapolate that and expand it and turn into prose, into a scene. Right. And even that's probably one of the top 3 or 4 most detailed things that he had.
Well, and because if you look at the events of a lot of these chapters and you write them out, it's like these people rode from that side of the river to this side of the river, right? Like so many of these chapters in these later books literally are, walk and talks where very little is actually happening, or what is happening can be described in a sentence or in a few words. But
that would be the whole series.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I do think in the later books especially, there is more of... He gets much more granular with the events, right? We're going into, this whole book is 10 days as opposed to 10 months, right? This book is going back over the events that we've already seen, right? There's a lot of very granular detail in what he's doing with these characters. And that slows down in later books compared to the earlier ones. Even the cleansing is like, okay, yeah, these characters are on a hill, and then these other characters are trying to attack them.
But yeah, Cadsuan teaching Rand to laugh and cry, maybe not the most clearly created piece of prose in the history of Wheel of Time.
Although I don't like his statement here, women could not teach men or men women. That was a hard fact as the one power itself.
Yeah. But it is prescient that what could Cadsuan teach him, what would he let her teach him? It's a remarkable amount of self-awareness.
Yeah, that's good. And it's interesting that it does 2 things there. It's doing double duty of that. You're right. It's prescient there and very cleverly stated. But it also shows Rand's, Rand is in a place where he is no longer ever going to be told what to do. He knows that he is king. He is king both literally and in his own mind, and he is not going to let anyone tell him what to do. He's going to allow people to teach him rather than be taught.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's he controls everything. And then the next thing I've got is a quick check-in with the whole Marana thing. Just like, hey, has Marana finished wrapping up my bargain? And Min's like, no, you left. The details are still being hammered out.
And that was the capital B bargain, right?
Right.
That they're
yeah. And it's like, it's not that it's anything to do with this chapter, but it's just like, just as a reminder, more is happening in the world.
Yeah, that's good. I noted that when I was reading through it, and I love that. There's so much happening in this chapter that, like you said, little check-ins, and Jordan's very good at that, not just the end of his books, but everywhere throughout his stuff.
Well, and there is so much in this chapter, Jason, that I realize we don't have enough time to cover it all with you.
You picked a really long chapter, right?
I picked a very long chapter with a lot of detail and a lot of things I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I honestly I thought it was going to be like an hour. I stupidly thought it was just going to be an hour.
Oh,
so I had scheduled it just to say, but
sorry, I should really
yeah,
prep for that because a chapter like this is going to take a little bit longer.
Okay, Barkin the Siege Folk, and then he sends Min away to be like, I gotta do man things, like blow shit up.
And this is where we get the report from Adley about what's been going on.
And the Aiel that showed up randomly, which
Right.
was from the Shido getting scattered with no channeling wise ones.
So that's why it didn't slow them down. They just, which always amazed me. They rode over several thousand Aiel with no problem. It's like, it's a hell of a force.
I didn't have any wise ones. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's weird. But that's the Shido being scattered and exterminated.
9 or 10,000, yeah.
And then there's the whole thing about Wireman.
I mean, they were shattered, and these are not optimal Aiel in their dedicated fight. Where this is this is a broken force, and this is also, I don't know. Savannah's still with him at that point, right? Or is she?
This is after they've been
what's
split
Savannah's
up.
stat? That's after they've been split up. Yeah.
So that's one of the little groups that's lost and confused, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So I could buy it. I mean, I can stretch my imagination to imagine that, these are not the Aiel of legend, so to speak,
And so do we think that is Sammael coming to the battlefield to fight these guys?
I don't see who else it would be.
Yeah. And he's, because he's heard the rumors that Rand's unconscious.
Yeah, and I mean, to be that strong, like Sammael doesn't enter into partnership with the other Forsaken and say, hey, help, fight me at battles. Like, no, if he's as strong as Rand, then it's got to be Sammael.
Men scheme and women plot, but the wheel weaves as it wills. I always think of all the plans of mice and men.
Yeah, totally.
Sort of
Totally.
the same saying, just different universe.
His take on it.
Yeah, and then Dashiva's like, I don't understand any of this. Why aren't you just killing him already? I'm a Forsaken in disguise. Wah! And it's just like, I don't know why it's taken me this long to figure out that it's Dashiva that's the bad one. Like, it didn't register on me for however many reasons. There was a problem there. Like, it's been really hard for me to keep track of which Ashaman it is. It's so obvious. I don't know what my problem is.
No, but I think it's because he hits us with name salad, and Dashiva gets
It's
lost
the
in
sh
the name. Yeah.
sound. Narishma and Dashiva, they have the sh in the middle, and my brain breaks. Except now I have the mnemonic that Narishma is a nice guy.
Yeah, those two specifically are very distinctive in my mind. I caught them pretty quickly
Same.
with their very. I think Narishma very descriptive. With the long hair and the bells in his hair, and he's the heir apparent of Kalendor. That we get in later books, but in the next book you'll probably talk about it a lot. But he's the heir apparent. And that becomes his thing.
Yeah, he will
It's pretty
follow
cool.
after. There's some debate about what that means, but we'll definitely get to that.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I really want to talk about is Min deceiving the Maidens for Rand, which results in his punishment.
Yeah, it occurred to me that this is why she gets beat up.
Yeah.
I thought it was just because she tried to interfere when they come to beat Rand up, but no.
No,
She actually incurs some tow here.
she really does. She deceives them. She lies to them.
for Rand, but still.
And she knows she's going to pay the price. This definitely put that beating in a new light.
She knows she's going to pay a price. It's like she knows that she's going to pay a price, but I don't know if she's going to know that she's going to pay the price. Like, what she ends up getting, because she seems in this scene a little dismissive of it, like, almost as if she kind of shrugs it off and says they're not going to like it when they find out. But
I think there's a cultural barrier there where I think that she understands they're going to be upset. She doesn't understand what Aiel being upset means.
Right.
Yeah,
she thinks that she'll like not get let into their like secret trust circles as much. She won't get in on the in joke. She'll be like shunned a little bit, like not kicked in the belly. Because the Aiel haven't needed to show her that side of themselves yet.
There's a little bit of hypocrisy here around Rand when when Dashiva looks at Min's butt and licks his lips. And there's just all sorts of like...
Rand like almost cuts his hand off because that'll teach him to lick his lips like a goat. It's like, okay, boyfriend. Being a little defensive there.
But it's also, that moment stuck out to me too, because, it seemed... that was Robert Jordan writing what I'm sure to him was tongue-in-cheek humor. And, because Rand's intentions are very different from Rand's actions, which is a hallmark of a lot of his characters, especially characters like Matt. Matt is so good at thinking one thing, bloody kids and goats and, these women are driving me crazy, but his actions are heroic and everything else. In this case, it's Rand trying to, in his own mind, be a reasonable sort of guy and whatever, I forget the line is, but he says something like, what does he care if Dashiva wants to look at Min's butt or, wants to look at her breeches or whatever. And then he just, so casually opens the portal that nearly cuts off Dashiva's hand, So again, it's actions and intentions that are opposite of each other. Jordan does a lot of that in his writing with his characters. And I think his characters are at their best when we do see that.
Definitely.
Not necessarily, I don't mean that Rand is being at his best as a person. I mean that writing wise, this is some of his strongest prose and characterization when he does things like that. Mm-hmm. Take note, other writers who are listening.
Or talking.
Jot this down for myself.
Let me take my notes.
The sense of Alana dwindles and it feels like a loss.
Yeah.
The more so because LTT isn't around anymore.
How much he's becoming accustomed to having that bond and having the sort of the benefits of the bonding, despite the fact that it was done without his consent. It does provide a lot of benefits. Strength, lack of sleep.
Now he's a warder getting far from his Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Was that done? That was done in the previous book. It was done in book 6, right?
Yeah.
Because she needed that to find him at Dumai's Wells.
That's right.
That's the plot point that I always associate it with, because that's how why he had to have that in there.
Yeah, and that's crazy because that's one of those examples of like Alana before that is just, I mean, she's distinctive and she has, everything, but she doesn't have an important role in the story. She's just there, and yes, she's unique, and there's some things that are specific to her, but she doesn't necessarily stand out prominently amongst all the other Aes Sedai until boom, she does this thing that is completely major plot changing, and shocking, horrifying, and everything else, and she becomes, such a important character kind of going forward. So I'm interested to see how, like, I almost think if she hadn't done that, there's no way she'd be in the TV series and cast with such a prominent actress and everything else,
It's the fourth boy from Emond's Field. He would have been absolutely boring and lack of personality for like 4 whole books, and then bam, he would have done something important. And Harriet said, absolutely not. You can't do that with one of the main characters. People won't stick around for it.
You can't do that. But you can do that with an Alana type.
So yeah, I maybe the fourth boy was Alan. We'll just say that. I know he wasn't. He's the other guy.
So they get to Bashere, and Bashere's like, already? Okay, that's sooner than I expected, but sure, we can do that. That's fine. It's fine. We'll make it work. It's fine.
Which again, we'll go back to the Weiramon excuse for why it's sooner than everybody expected. The man charged ahead much sooner than he should have.
Right. But Bashir is such a badass that he can make it work anyway. He's got, 15,000 men with crossbows that are all the rejects from the Black Tower. Like, he's got together a hell of a force despite being weeks rushed.
And 9,000 horse. Do we actually see the Force fight? I feel like Rand keeps saying, hey, he's interested in seeing how they fight, but we never actually see it happen.
We see in this chapter, we see them doing little skirmishes, but Rand wonders to himself, how are they going to fight with just crossbows and large shields and everything? But I think it's in Path of Daggers that we get to see them fight, isn't it?
Yeah, we do see them, but it's much later. But basically, Rand doesn't understand the concept of shield walls or automatic cranks.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
That was my question. These don't have the automatic cranks yet. These are just normal crossbowmen that are shooting in ranks. But I think they're doing it in a way that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 type situation.
Yeah.
So you have time to reload. But the reload time is still, it's then later when Matt gets the cranks, that's when he's able to really mess with the Shan Chan. Because essentially he takes a small force that looks like a big force because they're shooting enough crossbow bolts of like 10 times their number or something like that. But yes, this is the beginning of Matt's sort of automatic crank. I think of this as sort of like the seed of that idea that becomes the fight against the Shan Chan.
Yeah, because he gets really excited when he finds the engineer that can make the thing. But yeah, I mean, this is where we start to see crossbows can kick ass, even if Rand doesn't understand how. Like, they can.
And these are untrained
men. He's just jealous. Yeah. He's an old school archer. Two Rivers bow.
Totally. Takes a lifetime to learn. Yeah.
Also, what channeler wants a bunch of untrained people being able to shoot bolts at them, right? Like, that sounds terrible. All this power, all this training, all this risk in a crossbowman. It's like giving anyone a gun, right?
I was going to say, it must have been like the invention of handheld gunpowder weapons. Yeah. Like, what? No, it takes no skill. This sucks.
Especially when you're a glass cannon, like all these channelers are.
Yeah.
Right. Like one bullet to the head and they're done. Right. Unless they've got Codswain's Strongreal.
Right.
Yeah. Regarding Bashere, though, real quick, Bashere is one of my favorite characters. Minor characters in the series.
What wins you over with him?
You know what? First of all, he's a badass. He's one of the 5 great generals. Right. I love that. We have that. I love that. Even though he is Perrin's father-in-law, that he is primarily with Rand. And a lot of ways I don't want to say he takes over a mentorship role, but in a way he kind of is. He's often the voice of reason to Rand's manic, let's go destroy them all. I'm the king of the world. And we see that a lot more in Path of Daggers. And
isn't he the one who tackles Rand?
Yep.
He's the one who tackles. That's right. Yeah, he does. That's exactly it. So when in the next book, when you guys get to this chapter, A Time for Iron, he's out there and Rand's holding up Kalimdor and he's unbuffered by its power and he's raging with it or whatever. And it's Bashere who knocks him off his horse, literally.
Yeah, body slams him.
Body slams him off the horse to be like, dude, what are you doing, man? I think that's his line. What are you doing, man?
Yeah, you're killing us.
Not my lord. Right. Yeah. And
which tells you what a badass he is. The only one who goes charging, like, this army killing person is there, and you're like, oh, I have to go tackle him.
Do you want to be the one to knock the God King off his horse?
Bashere's like, yes.
Yes. I'm the man who does that. I'm the one who steps up and knocks out the god. That takes some balls, or courage.
Gonads.
And then the other thing about Bashere too is that not that I don't want to say I approve of it, but I find the dynamic with his wife, I find that dynamic to be really interesting to read. And again, not that I necessarily condone or approve of how they do things, but the cultural aspect. We see the Saldeans through he and his family. We learn about their culture. We see them manifested specifically. And so that dynamic that he has with his wife, which I guess ultimately is kind of summed up as, in public, you rule, and in private, I rule.
Very sea folk.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's interesting that, Saldea is way up north in the map, and the sea folk generally, I think of down south in the ocean. I know there's, to the west, but still, they're in very different places on the planet. And yet that dynamic. Yeah. But also that's again, that's a very Robert Jordan thing. Like I'm not a person of the South, but that is my understanding. That is a that's a dynamic that we have in, in our culture. It's maybe predominantly in the South at times, and certainly it's an old school idea too, I think, in a lot of families and cultures.
It comes a little bit with like, the man is the goes out and earns a living, and the woman takes care of the house, right? There's that sort of public private dynamic.
But in private, that's when it's a very Robert Jordan-esque thing. The wife in Emmons Field, whispering in the ear of the husband, and
women's circle, men's council, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yep. And also thinking about it too in the scheme of politically, I know not all the nations clearly. Nations like Andor, aren't all ruled, by kings exclusively. That's not the case. But the idea of the Aes Sedai women whispering in the ears of the kings and not they themselves ruling, we don't rule, but who rules? Who runs this place? Who runs this continent? It's the Aes Sedai are right there in the mix. So anyway, those are some of the reasons that I love Bashere. There's so much for him there's so much meat there to chew on as a character. He's not just a general. He's a father figure literally to Fael. He's mentorship to Perrin, but he's also even more so kind of mentorship a bit to Rand. And it's so
he's one of Rand's major, most trusted counselors for sure. Not just politically or strategically, but like as a person.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, the whole we will talk like, okay, no wives. We will talk of this at length.
Oh,
it's so, like you're saying, there's just so much world building in this tiny little domestic exchange, and there's just boom, so much.
And like men, he's like, I'm gonna get this later, like but
worth it.
But that is sort of the relationship that Fael wants. Is basically when it's important, she wants to be told this is important, deal with it, right? Like. And whether or not we go about that, getting that relationship the right way, that's a whole different ballgame. But that's what Perrin's not doing, right? Perrin is being like, please, which for him is very nice, but it's not.
He's he wants that feedback, and she's like, shut up, we're in public, don't ask me for advice, be a king, or whatever, more or less.
But it's cool too how like it works, like the chain of command is so perfect throughout the Saldae, and troops like all the wives will listen to Dira. Like, he doesn't have to convince every single couple to go through that. He only has to convince the top couple. And then Dira's like, we're going to have long talks with our husbands later. Just, it's a thing. And all the wives are like, okay, long talks with our husbands. Got it.
Yep.
So they enter the gateway, which is a 4x4, 4 paces by 4, right? And that, interesting, you blew my mind. There was an earlier chapter where they were practicing running between 2 rocks 4 paces apart. And when I realized that's the maximum size of a gateway Rand can channel, that they have been practicing this and practicing this and practicing this the entire book.
Because they run through and then they split off into the streets. It has to be choreographed.
They fork out.
Yeah, and so all of that was been choreographed, and they've been practicing that repeatedly for this exact moment. This has been so carefully planned out. The distraction was supposed to be all the other forces that were being sent out that Mat was leading, but it turned out the distraction was instead Rand being put down for 2 days.
Yeah.
And that's what made Sammael come out, because he's like, oh, Rand's unconscious, I can take a risk.
Yeah. The one thing, as we close this portion of the chapter, today the light willing, no women would die because of him. He's gonna kill Leah in like 3 hours.
It's great foreshadowing.
He tries so hard.
I know, and this is smack in the middle of the whole very debated, hotly discussed, phobia, not phobia, I don't know, but hang up. Yeah, I was trying to think of a harsher term, but hang up that Rand has for harming women, that a lot of characters have in the series. And I think that's also another very Jim Rigney thing. That's probably something that he, being a man of his generation and his time and his place, that was probably a belief that I would imagine, I don't want to speak authoritatively like that, but I would imagine that's probably what he believed and how he was raised. And I know that's how he was raised, and I imagine that's what he believed, at least. So, but yeah, so we got, Rand does it. He's obviously in the biggest case. Perrin does it. I think even Mat, thinks about it to some. Mat, that's right. Mat does it because Mat killed
Melindra.
Yeah, Melindra, and he throws it, and he's like trying to reach back to take that dagger that's already been thrown. It's all out of his hand. He's trying to bring it back.
He gets over it the most of the boys, but it's a getting over.
Yeah.
It's a big thing to get over, even for him.
Yeah. But surprisingly, I think Lan has it a bit, but I think Lan gets over like in New Spring. Like he just has to kill the bad Aes Sedai every now. Like I think Lan gets over it fairly quickly, right?
He's the one that tells Moraine, like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. I don't think Lan had much of an issue with it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's Rand is like leading this huge army in. He's managed to like put the women aside, and he's like, I'm not gonna kill women today. Women won't die because of me. And it's like, it's sweet of you to care, but like, how many of your men are dying because of that? And also, you're still gonna be killing women or having them die. Like,
yeah. I feel like the Borderlanders definitely protect women, but they've seen more women go up in battle. Like the Saldeans fight. Like Lan would be much more used to women fighting and dying in battle, I feel like, than Rand. Does that make sense?
Borderlanders understand that soldiers are soldiers.
Right. Necessities of war and all that.
I was just thinking, does Rand, I think I know the answer here. Does Rand ever kill a female Forsaken in the series?
Natron's Barrow. He tries. He fails.
He
but
tries.
No, I mean, technically he does get Arengar.
Who he didn't know was there. But
he balefires her.
He's trying to kill Grandal, and he gets Arengar instead.
Yeah. He gets the wrong one, but he gets one, yeah.
If you guys remember at the end of Fires of Heaven, when Lanfear is there, like torturing him, holding, that one dude's skin and all this stuff, and she's torturing him.
Kadir.
And Kadir.
Who is Aviendha?
Right, exactly. But Rand is there, and I think there's a moment, it's been a while since I've read, but I think there's a moment there where he thinks to himself, he could he can do it. He sees it, he has a window to just zap her, to bring her down with lightning or whatever it is, but he couldn't do it because she's a woman. I'm like, dude, she is killing you. She is literally skinned a man to death, and is slowly torturing you or whatever, and you still can't do it on this pencil. That's more than a hang up.
She's trying to kill your allies who happen to be women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If he had been a true Borderlander, he would have been able to kill her because she was trying to kill 2 of his women friends.
It's like the trolley problem, right? Really? Can you not throw that lever even when there's more people on the other track? Right? What, if there's 5 women tied to a track and 1 woman tied to the other one, and if you don't pull the lever, right, you run over 5 of them, but you're like, oh, I don't want to murder that one woman.
Yeah. It's very much how he is with the Forsaken, and it's...
I do get it. But, and then that comes back to the way of the leaf, right? Are you really doing no harm by doing no harm?
Yeah.
Right? Is it actually by neglecting to protect yourself or neglecting to protect others, is that not doing harm to them?
Very interesting moral question.
Yeah, it's a big theme of the series here. I mean, I think even going back to the time of the Age of Legends, in this time of utopia, and they would just put they would their criminals, they would just pacify them, with
mind control,
with mind control or whatever it was. Yeah, and it's like, so we see this theme over and over and over, that's repeated, and I love that. It's brilliant about the series. One of the things.
Well, I think on that note, let's call this the first half of this chapter, because it turns out a 25-plus page chapter with a lot of major events is too much to cover in one setting, which we should know that by now. I just think we didn't really realize quite how long the chapter was when we scheduled it a year ago.
And then you brought me on, and I like to talk about it all the time.
Well, some guests are more long-winded than others, and then there's Jason.
And some of them have to stop, and others of them can just keep going.
No, there's certain...
But thank you so much for joining us. It's been fun.
Yeah, we really do appreciate that. Great insights about Robert Jordan and his books and the history of the fandom and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, let's keep going with it. We'll go into... are you still going to publish it as one episode and we'll just edit it together as one thing? Or are you going to put out 2 episodes?
We're going to be caffeinated for part 2, so they'll probably need to be 2 different episodes.
Okay.
The tone will be different.
The tone will be very different, yeah.
Yeah, this has been fun, and I look forward to wrapping the chapter up on Saturday.
Right, thanks for doing that, guys.
Oh, no, not a problem. Sorry about the, I should have made it more clear that we were going to go for at least 2 hours.
I'm glad it turned out this way, because it makes sense. Like, it's not like a random chapter 14 in the book. It's the end of the book before a break you guys taking, and there's so much to unpack here.
Yeah, you said it was a rush chapter, so we're just slowing it down.
There you go. It's crazy. That's it.
And that does make sense. This would be a good place to put a actual chapter break if I had been editing it, is open the gateway, chapter break, final
Chart
battle
of,
Shadow Logoth, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that would be the pace that
Yeah,
I would
maybe.
set that at if I was doing the editing on this. We'll just pretend that happened. Yeah.
We'll just make it 2 episodes. It's fine. Editorializing after the fact. Hey, now people are coming in. You see Nicholas and Bambi. Hi, Bambi. How's tomorrow?
Bambi's from Australia.
She's in tomorrow.
Good to know that the future exists.
Yeah, right?
The future's now, old man. So I feel like we had a bunch of chit chat before, and now that we've started recording, we've totally
Womp,
we've hit that wall.
womp.
That's all right. No one cares about talk about our wildfire stories. So.
No, I mean sometimes they do. We've all dealt with them, but
Mhm.
Well, Bambi says that Wednesday is rainy, so that's
that's good.
encouraging.
I'll take that.
They've had their own fair share of fires down there.
Yeah,
Sure.
seriously.
It's winter for them though right now,
Yeah.
right?
Correct. They are headed towards spring as we are headed towards fall.
Which is just so hard to wrap my head around, because the idea that seasons are different in different parts of the world is just crazy to me. As a kid, right? Yeah,
Spherical
I know.
Earth.
Like, logically it makes sense, but there's part of me that just goes, it's not summer everywhere? What? No, summer is a time of year, and summer happens in this month for everybody all the time. And the fact that it doesn't was definitely one of those things that I think is not intuitive to kids.
Yeah, for sure. Thinking in 4 dimensions is rough.
Yeah, and then occasionally you get six seasons in one day.
And then there's Oregon, where you've got, winter rain season, spring rain season, mud season, fall, summer, the one day that is summer, which is August 13th, and then you're into early fall, and then mud season. And
The seasons have been changing, though. We've had summer, and then smoke season, and then fire season, and then
it's true, we've been adding new seasons.
COVID season, when everyone goes inside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was just a geologic era.
Ah, gotcha.
That's just an epoch.
Do you have the same problem where you say last year, you mean 2019?
Yeah.
It does just kind of seem one continuous
Uh-huh.
year, doesn't it?
No.
Yeah. It's a problem. Time is more meaningless than ever.
Time is a wheel.
Time is a wheel.
Time is a puddle.
Time is relative. But yeah, I wanted to introduce, today we have Jason Denzel from Dragonmount. You hold a special place in my heart, Jason, because you gave us our first real boost on social media that got us out there and got like day 1 downloads going. You were like maybe one of our first listeners on the first episode.
I'm glad to hear that, and I always love doing stuff with you. I know we've done this a couple times in various conventions and everything, and so I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad that I was able to send you those first 2 or 3 people.
It was more than
Showed
that. I'll
up or
tell you
whatever
that.
it
It was definitely more than that. I'll have to go back and look at that first tweet, but it got liked and retweeted quite a bit. So,
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And the Wheel of Time community, it's always been about a rising tide lifts all ships, and so I'm always glad to promote it. We're all here for the same reasons, and all the enthusiasm and knowledge that you bring. It's the same thing that that I was doing way before that, and someday I'm sure, and you already have. I know you're uplifting other shows and other events that are less experienced in here, so it's fantastic. And I'm a listener. I don't get to every episode of yours, but I frequently I've subscribed to your show, and I listen through them, and I just pop in at random times and random books and random chapters just to hear what you and others are saying, and it's great. So
I appreciate that, and that's kind of the purpose of the show. Has always been set up to be a evergreen type content. It's just like, oh, I wonder what they said about that chapter, and you don't have to follow an order, or you don't have to necessarily be listening to it in real time. We actually don't release episodes for 2 weeks because I don't want there to be any news in the show. I don't want there to be anything relevant to what just happened in the show. This is a show about books that ended. Oh gosh, how many years ago has it been now? Uh,
A lot of years,
12
yeah.
years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, a long time. And that's commendable. I mean, there's keeping up with Wheel of Time news is a full-time job in its own, and keeping even and setting aside the news aspect of it, of everything happening in the franchise. Um, you've got a large enough task just summarizing these ginormous books, and you've made it as of today through 7 of them, almost to the end of 7. I guess that's why we're all here,
That
right?
is.
And so when you sent out this invitation to, you sent it out to me and some others, and with some possible opportunity, I was like, I want to end the
Yep.
book because it's such an amazing ending, and I will always grab onto a beginning or an ending of a book, but especially one of the endings, especially in this series, and maybe especially one of, this is one of the best endings, I think, in the series, and all sorts of things. And it's also the last book that I read purely as a fan, because Path of Daggers came out a couple years later, and Path of Daggers came out right at the same time, just a few months after Dragonmount had launched. So I had shifted my mindset from being just a pure reader without any thought in the world except reading these amazing books, to Path of Daggers became the first one where I was thinking about it, not just as a fan, but as, a promoter of content, and thinking about what my reaction to it online would be. How can I tell others people about it? And going into a more metaverse. With another thing about it, it's kind of interesting that half of the series, 7 of the 14 mainstream books were that way. I never thought of it that way, but it just seems like forever to me.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, this does bring us to a halfway point for us, right? Like, this is the end of book 7 for us. This is halfway through the series.
You're halfway through. And what's interesting, it's, even though it's halfway maybe in terms of book count, I don't know, have you guys figured out like where page count wise or word count wise, where the middle of the series is? I'm sure someone has. It's been a while.
I think I did chapter count, and it was somewhere in the middle of this book, because there's way fewer chapters after. Like, the next 3 books have like 30 and 40 chapters, whereas the first few have like 50.
Yeah.
So
50.
Yeah, the balance is a little earlier if you want to do actual chapter count.
Yeah, and also I think that the spiritual thematic, when I think about it as a writer type, the real middle of the book, if not page count wise, is Dumai's Wells, is the end of book 6. And everything changes after Dumai's, everything. And Rand changes, and as Rand goes, as does the series, as the Ashaman show up, have arrived. Just everything hinges on Dumai's Wells. And, from a traditional story arc point of view, that's called the midpoint. And the midpoint is when you get your characters at their lowest low. Your midpoint is where, the stuff is darkest. It's your Empire Strikes Back kind of, moment. And it all kind of hinged on Dumai's Wells. Now, we know that that's only the end of book 6, so it's a little bit early, but you can also kind of argue that Brandon's 3 books, bring me back for those books too. For Brandon's 3 books, although they are 3 books, they were largely outlined as a single volume originally. And
although I would argue that there was no one, they could be a single volume, and B, 3 is too short.
That's true. Sure, there's a lot of content there, but I mean, I'm less word count and everything, but more just kind of the spiritual feel of it, the thematic feel.
And you think about the timeline too. Like there's 3 years in the whole books, right? And like the last half of the published books cover like 6 months or less.
On that note, I think this is the shortest book in the series, isn't it? It's like 11 days long.
We worked it out as a week. It's a Randland week.
Is it a week? Is it?
It's a Randland week.
Yeah, 10 days. Yeah, Randland week, 10 days. Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. And so I got a question for you, because I was wondering about this myself. I looked somewhere up on Dragonmount. It listed the dates of the actual chapters. And this chapter takes place in the same year that Rand took the Stone of Tyr, which makes sense. But there's a part here, and I know I'm jumping toward the end, but Rand thinks to himself, something like, was it all that long ago that I told, the High Lords of Tyr to sell grain to the people of Illian. He goes, that was so long ago. I'm thinking, actually, wait a minute, it was probably less than a year ago.
It was a 2020 year for him.
Right.
It was a 2020 year for him. And for Robert Jordan writing it at the time, it was a good, 6 years or so, or I think it was 5 years difference. It means it was probably 6 years between when he actually wrote the words. So for him, it's funny, 6 months in it, but in real life, in our world, 6 years ago, that he was thinking, oh yeah, I forgot I had Rand do that,
And in podcast time, it's been 2 years, So I also was like, man, 2 years ago. Yeah, that feels like a long time. I agree. But yeah, no, it hasn't been that long. That's the scene where I think back, and that's where Rand sits down and tries to remember a simple shepherd named Rand al'Thor.
And that's only in TDR.
Yeah.
Poor dragon.
Well, I think that might be Shadow Rising, because that's the beginning of Shadow Rising.
Oh, you're right.
That's
You're right.
the bubble of evil.
He's still in tier with the whole taking the stone. That's a TDR event.
Right,
So
yeah.
But no, you're right. It is the beginning. It's the bubbles of evil at the beginning of TSR. Is when he's like, man, I've changed so much. And it's like, oh, you sweet summer
You just
child.
wait.
Sweet summer child, exactly. I know.
You have so far to
You have no
go.
idea what's coming.
Have you guys done that? Like, and I say this more as like a meditation for the listeners here. Have you gone back after reading late stage Rand, or we know there's early Rand, there's middle books Rand, and then there's the enlightened Rand of the last 3 books, right? And spoilers, I guess, but have you done that where you've read, especially like middle book Rand, angry, hard as Quindalar Rand, and then gone back and read that first chapter, An Empty Road, and you got the oh gosh gee willy pa kind of Rand, and it's such a stark difference.
I'm currently going through, or my significant other, I introduced to the Wheel of Time for the first time, and she's going through. She went through Eye of the World, and we're in the middle of. Well, actually, we're coming to the end of the Great Hunt. So yeah, pretty much for the last 2 months. Well, I guess it's been longer than that. 6 months. I've been going out, and every once in a while, I listen to Eye of the World, and it's on audiobook, so I'm listening along with her. A lot of times, in the car. So, and that takes me back to do these episodes, and then go being transported back into Eye of the World Rand, and him and Matt on the path together, and absolutely, it's such a remarkable difference to see that character evolve. All the characters, really, Rand maybe more than most, because he's had a lot of character development in the last 6 books, but the other characters too get a lot different.
And he certainly goes through the most torment. That's taking nothing away from all the other characters who, are tormented, and certainly Egwene goes through stuff. But a lot of Egwene's hardest struggle comes in the later books. Again, not disparaging what she goes through in the Idle Waste and the Wise Ones, oh my God, and all that kind of stuff. But really, if you were to add up, every emotional or physical torment that's put upon these characters, by the time we've hit this book, there's no question that Rand has carried the most of it, just in terms of sheer volume of pain. And
yeah, although Egwene does give him a run for the money. The time as Damani is pretty rough, and pretty much equivalent to Rand's time in a box.
Yeah, that's true. But again, that's later. That's more later stage. Like I was saying, is that by at this point in the story, at the halfway through the series, Rand is carrying that largest burden. But absolutely, Egwene surges, or surges against her, or whatever.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?